Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We're positively into, what used to be my favorite week of the year back when Eric DeCosta and I used to roll together and Phil Savage. And I used to go out to Owings Mills and collect envelopes on draft week. But that was so earlier in the century. This century, Luke will be monitoring all things NFL draft on Thursday night. I'm actually going to be attending the Coppin State Gala at the Hippodrome for 125 years, honoring Fannie Jackson Coppin as well as Dr. Jenkins and everything they're doing over at Coppin. So I'll be doing that on Thursday night. But this guy has been disappeared around here in the last couple of months. We're going to bring him back to life. He was always such a great friend of ours and a great supporter of everything we ever did. But more than that, a great voice on the NFL draft, which is always his favorite thing around here. We got together on Thursdays. We got together on Mondays. We bought cars. We sold cars. We serviced cars. We did a lot of things with Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Koulatsos is our returning champion. Den, I still don't have a press pass. We got a new owner. It's been a little while. We have a scandal with the kicker, another scandal with the offensive lineman that they signed after there's the scandal. The baseball team's in disarray right now for pitching. You're selling cars. I'm writing letters to Katie Griggs, who I've never spoken to you about. And things change quickly around here. I looked, you were on right before the playoffs. You were on a couple 4 or 5 months ago. It wasn't that long ago, man.
Time flies, Nestor, when you're busy, not necessarily when you're having fun, but it's all good. Any day above ground is a great day, but it is one of my favorite time of the year. As a draft Nick way back in the day, from way back in the day. Can't wait for the NFL draft. It's something I get very excited about, particularly when it comes to our Baltimore Ravens and their 11 draft picks. Plus, there's some drama there with Justin Tucker, maybe to a lesser extent with Mark Andrews. Could a trade be coming? So no lack of intrigue as we lead up to the draft this week.
All right. Well, where is your mind? I haven't talked to you at all. I mean, I can give you had your own show here for a decade. Um, what's the lead story for you? I mean, Tucker, the fact that they can still win the Super Bowl, the fact that they've signed Ronnie Stanley. I mean, look, there's three ways to look at this, right? There's the Ravens website where there is no scandal with Justin Tucker, where they did everything to sign Ron. You can go blue sky on whatever their off season is, and they're a very good organization. They're good at doing this. Or you can go the other way, which is this is scandalous, it's outrageous, it's the latest in this, the zero tolerance. Lamar can't win the big one. You can go through all of that, or you can hit it down the middle and just call it the way it is, which is they've been good, but not good enough. And, scandals don't matter to them. I mean, I still think Tucker might be their kicker next week.
Well, he might be their kicker, but I do think with 11 draft picks, they are prudent in drafting a kicker. There's a couple of really good ones out there, and they've sent out their kicking guru all over the country to check out these guys personally. So in reading the tea leaves, I do see them moving away from Justin Tucker. People that I've talked to, their question is about these ladies coming out is why so late? Look, that's just a question that they have to answer, but there's a lot of smoke there, and
Have you
you
read the
hate.
stories, by the way? I mean, have you read the three pieces?
I've read the pieces, and
Well,
again,
then you answer the question of why these women came out so late. Have you ever been a woman? Have you ever been a woman who's been assaulted? Have you ever been a woman behind closed
no,
doors
but
assaulted? Like the waiting period of this was that these women were found by the journalists.
yeah,
That's really the story. I mean, and I've talked to all the
no, I
journalists
get it.
involved. These women didn't want to come forward, but did you hear whispers on the street? Because I didn't. I could stand in front of my creator or the Supreme Court and say, it never really made it to my desk that Justin Tucker had this. But oh my, so many people connected in all sorts of ways in the community had heard whispers of this for a long, long time and actually knew some of these women.
Yeah, I never heard the whispers either, Nestor. It came out that there were talks at the Ravens Stadium at the parking lot between people that knew or had an inkling that this thing was out there. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of smoke there, and to me, I do think they're going to do their due diligence. I can't see him coming back. They're going to save some cap money from a business standpoint. It's a shame that this thing happened to these ladies, but I think they're going to move away from Justin Tucker. But you can certainly spend one draft pick out of 11 to take the best or the second best kicker out there, depending on the draft order. So, and other teams' needs, but this team needs to be built from the trenches out. You know, I'm a trenches out kind of a person. The defensive line, the offensive line. I think that's where this draft's going to start. Whether they pick the best edge rusher available or the best offensive lineman, somebody perhaps like Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, which I like a lot. He played left guard when the left tackle got injured. He slid over, did a great job. And you mentioned Ronnie Stanley, so I think it would be a great investment for the Ravens to double up and protect themselves in the case of injury, in the case Ronnie Stanley gets injured. And by the way, with the departure of Patrick McCary, they do need a left guard. So to me, if Donovan Jackson's there and he's the best player available, that's who I'm turning my card in for in the first round.
Well, I mean, they've had a history of trading up a little bit because they have some capital to be able to maybe move up a couple of picks. Certainly, they've moved back in the past and picked up extra picks. So I don't know that I think Thursday night they're on the board. They're going to take their pick. I would say that they're really good at this, right? And that's one of the things that's made you so interested in it over the 30 years of the team being here and me is that in the early days, and it feels like a minute ago, they were so awful in the beginning that the draft was all we had in the Boulware, Kim Herring, Chris McAllister era. And then really it's been this blossom of 25 years now where they always have this base of great players. They're always capable of taking an Ed Reed or a Kyle Hamilton or a Lamar Jackson in between of all of the Sergio Kindles and the busted draft picks and the Matt Elons and the Elams and the Elon. Sheesh, there you go. I'm off on
Time
another
flies.
tangent here. I've lost my
Time
mind.
flies.
I said Elam, but nonetheless, the their pedigree on this is good. And you being a former offensive lineman yourself, knowing interior line, knowing the big sloppies are where you like to look at scouting this thing. Where are you on their offensive line makeup in regard to Ronnie Stanley and in regard to how they've handled the departure of Zeitler? And I go back a decade, even more than a decade now. Replacing Matt Burke was really problematic for Joe Flacco. Then replacing Marshall Yanda, and anytime you say Hall of Famers or Hall of Very Good, very problematic for the offensive line in a general sense. Felt like they had it together with Zeitler and Moses for a period of time back when you and I were still doing radio every week, and they were 15-1, and they're going to be great and all that stuff. This period here where Lamar's in his prime, they have weapons. The Derrick Henry thing was I don't know where Eric would have gotten that idea, only the 3 years of me lobbying for it. But the offensive line and how they've handled this and where they are with Ronnie Stanley, Dennis, I would think that it's almost miraculous in both of our minds that Ronnie Stanley has gotten another deal, has come back together because you and I spent long weeks talking about the offensive line issues and what they needed to do. And I don't know that I wouldn't have signed Ronnie Stanley, but I think it's something to talk about.
Yeah, you and I are both stunned at the turn of events. But you know what? Ronnie Stanley's been able to stay healthy. It looks to me like he's lost some weight. He's leaned out. He looks lighter on his feet. He's been a dancing bear for a while now. And they also didn't overpay for him. There were other teams that offered him more money, and to his credit, he chose to stay with the organization that drafted him. And let's hope he stays healthy. He's a big key in how far they'll go into the playoffs. If they should they make the playoffs. But I do think it's prudent that they play some defense here by drafting an offensive guard that can slide to left tackle. And it's also important for people to understand that you need a left guard to be able to slide over to left tackle. It's like eating with your opposite hand when you switch sides. The footwork's different, so there is a difference between playing the left side versus the right side of the line. So that's something that to key in on as we watch this draft unfold. Which players at guard can slide over to left tackle, and which is why I've been beating the drum for Donovan Jackson from Ohio State.
Well, it's not very sexy, is it? When you already these other teams, Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback; they can't win, right? Cleveland's got Joe Flacco. Other teams have injuries and stuff. This team, when we take it top to bottom, scandal aside for Justin Tucker, and I'm never going to let that one fly because he's still on the team. You know what I mean? Like, and he's going to kick in the league. There's no doubt about that. So if he's going to kick in the league, why not here? And, they haven't been allergic to the scandal part of this, and that's been the weird part for me with zero tolerance and everything. I mean, Ray Rice is coaching down the street at Milford now, so like, and player of the game and honoree of the game. I mean, like that was so they've run away from all that. But Bisciotti doesn't have press conferences anymore, and this team has all of the pieces, right? Harbaugh's a made guy. He's got his money now. He's here. Nobody's questioning that anymore. Lamar's here. Got screwed out of an MVP, really, this last year by the result of the team and the organization. And just in a general sense, they're expected to be a Super Bowl contender every year this year. And the draft's not very sexy when you take linemen, right? Like this is not their time of the year to be talked about so much.
Also, when you're drafting as late as they do, which is a good thing in theory, you're not going to get sexy draft picks. You might get a safety, you might get an offensive lineman, you might get an edge rusher, you might look into one of those type of guys. But you're right. But this team doesn't need a lot. They don't need a lot. Truth be told, they don't have room for 11 rookies. So I can see them not only trading up, but also trading into next year. As Eric DeCosta, just like Ozzie Newsome, they like to stockpile picks. They like volume. They feel like they can hit better with volume versus having less picks, which makes sense long term. It's been very successful for this organization for many years. But circling back to the Tucker thing and Ray Rice, this organization has been a bit uneven, to say the least, in how they view rules. And it looks to me like unless the NFL forces their hand, they may keep Justin Tucker. Ray Rice to me was a gross injustice for a number of reasons. I know Ray on a personal level. And the fact that he was blackballed from the league leaves a lot to be desired. How they handle this Tucker case, it's going to be very interesting, Nestor, because again, as I've said, they've had different rules for different people. Who was the wide receiver? I forget his name. That was convicted of manslaughter because he drove over a guy that was drunk while being drunk, and this was a player that they put back on the team. I think his name was Singleton or Singletary or something
Stallworth,
like that.
Dante Stallworth.
Stallworth.
Yeah.
I was much younger back then, but I lost my mind when they put him on the team. So you're telling me that a guy convicted of manslaughter gets to play football for the Baltimore Ravens, but they've let other things slide. That doesn't make any
Well, the
sense to
other
me.
thing is you're not allowed to ask him any questions either. I mean, I don't know
But
if you saw that Bisciotti Harbaugh love him with one of their intimidated employees on the webcam a couple weeks ago. There's been no accountability to this and no questions. And I don't know the value of an NFL investigation, Dennis. I'm writing about that this week. I'm writing a letter to Roger Goodell because there's all sorts of chicanery going out in that building. And having people like me thrown out to not ask questions while Justin Tucker's off doing whatever he's doing and has been doing. I just, they're too big to fail. They're going to sell tickets whether Justin Tucker's their kicker, whether he's kicking for the Packers. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like that part of it to me is written into it. The part that's not written in is the accountability part of getting $600 million, throwing the media out of the 50-yard line, throwing media out of the building, using it as an excuse to throw media out of the building. And then you have this Justin Tucker thing and nobody wants to answer questions. And there's an NFL investigation, which Dennis, that's its own punchline. But, I've looked the woman up, Lisa Friel, who was their investigator, very legitimate sexual trafficking, human trafficking, all sorts of the right side of the law in the state of New York and all that. But once you work for the NFL and you've investigated Daniel Snyder and, everything turns to evaporate, I just, I have real credibility issues for everybody in the league, but none of this should be shocking. But also, it speaks to the power of the brand, the brands, the shield, the Ravens, the power, misogyny, men, wealthy men, pulling this stunt of running around to massage parlors and hazing women, just kidding around while being a complete jerk. And having that go on and having women so intimidated and shops so intimidated that nobody could blow a whistle, that's a real power issue. And it's a disturbing thing to me. The deeper it's gone the last 6, 8, 10 weeks into this, it's disturbing that this happened and could happen, and it takes journalism literally to make it come to light because it couldn't have come to light. And back to your original premise about, why did these women wait all this long? Bill Cosby. I mean, you're going to
No,
make
I
an
hear you.
accusation. But this is about power and money and local brand of what they can get away with that Dennis and Nestor would never get away with, ever, ever.
Right. Well, the reason I asked that question because that is a fair question, and to me, it's the only question is why wait, and it's been answered properly. But I think the cautionary tale here, Nestor, is just look at the Deshaun Watson situation, how that played out in Cleveland. What a horrible thing that was for those women. What a horrible thing was it for him to go back and play in the NFL. And also from a business standpoint, it certainly didn't help the Cleveland Browns. One thing that stuck with me lately, Nestor, is that red flags don't go down. So when somebody had red flags about them, they just don't go down. So whether you're talking about Justin Tucker, Deshaun Watson, or anybody else of that ilk, to me, that is buyer beware. So if this thing with Justin Tucker, if the NFL finds him guilty of these accusations, I don't see him kicking in the NFL.
Well, I mean, that would be a hell of a statement. It's certainly to your point with Ray Rice, who's coaching over at Milford. I made a wrong turn the other day over on your side of town, and I wound up on Lord Baltimore because it was a Beltway thing. I drove right past Milford. I'm like, I haven't been here since I wrestled here in 1984. Dennis Koulatsos is still doing it out on the west side of town. Give everybody a little Dennis update. It's been a little while. I mean, you've been around here for 2 decades. You're in, you're out. There's a new group that owns Coons, and there's things happening, but you're still selling cars, man.
Still selling cars, still serving the public, still serving our team members, and not much has changed about me. Just fishing at Loch Raven, Pretty Boy, or Liberty on Sundays. That's become my passion and my
What are you
hobby. That's how
catching?
I
What are you
spend.
catching when you're
I'm
out there?
catching bass, largemouth and smallmouth bass. I'm becoming a modern day Lefty Craig. Remember Lefty, of course.
Ooh, I knew
Old
Lefty.
well, Bill Burton, but just confined to three wonderful reservoirs and meeting a lot of nice local people on the lake. Everybody's chill, laid back. We all have the same goal, just to have some fun out there and catch these critters and release them that way. Somebody's grandson or granddaughter can catch them one day. So life is good, no complaints. We're selling cars. Ford has employee pricing for everyone. That's played out real well for us. We're very busy. We're selling a lot of cars and trading a lot of cars, and can't wait for this draft to kick off on Thursday.
Well, we got a whole weekend. It's Dennis's favorite weekend, so I wanted to get him in here, give a little, just in a general sense with the Ravens and needs. I mean, Luke and I have gone through
Yeah,
all of that. Obviously, the kicker thing will play out as it does play out. For me, safety and figuring out
yeah.
how to make Kyle Hamilton more hybrid, just in general, the speed and what they want to do defensively, and bringing Chuck Pagano back in to help Zach Orr on that side of the ball. To your point, getting after the quarterback. I mean, I'm not an OA guy. I mean, I need more consistency at that position. That's really lacks sense Suggs, right? I mean, you could talk about Judon and the 5 minutes of 30 something linebackers that they've really done a good job of, signing, whether it was Clowney 2 years ago, Van Noy's been a part of this. Um, and also the offensive line, we go deep into that. But Mark Andrews and dropping the ball, Dennis, I don't know that I've had you on since he dropped the ball. Have I? I think I had
No,
you on before the playoffs or during sort of the holidays. I haven't had you on when Mark Andrews avoided the podium, walked out the side door, had nothing to say. I don't know where the accountability at this is from top down when the owner's unavailable, the kicker's off doing whatever he's doing. And by the way, the thing with the kicker that really pissed me off, because it's been a little while since you and I got together, was within 5 minutes, he dirted up the media. He dirted up the reporters and said the reporters are scumbags. And like that, to me, when you start dirting the reporters 5 minutes after the report's out, you're losing. So they've had scandal with kicker, owner unavailable, coach has a new deal, Mark Andrews dropped the ball. Um, but they have so many assets here going into this that they can this week really augment their roster in the few little holes they have to put this thing over the top and go win a championship next year.
Yeah, they can use a defensive tackle. They can use a rush end. They need a linebacker to put next to Roquan Smith, as Trenton Simpson hasn't really panned out. They can use a safety. They can use a corner. And that's just on the defensive line of the ball, Nestor. Offensively, offensive linemen may double down there. They're going to double down at one position, maybe two. Cornerback, offensive lineman. Depending on what happens with Mark Andrews, they can draft another young tight end. They can certainly use a wide receiver. They can always use a wide receiver. There may be a running back there in the mix too, late in the later round. So they're going to draft, I think, every position but quarterback. I thought it was smart getting Cooper Rush. Now they have a real quarterback to back up Lamar Jackson, somebody who can take them through the playoffs and give them a legitimate shot at winning the Super Bowl should Lamar Jackson, God forbid, go down. But they don't have a lot of needs, as you mentioned. They just have to hit on the picks that they select in this year's draft class in order for them to continue their success.
So let's recap this. You think Tucker's kicked his last kick, correct?
I really do. I mean, hiring a firm to represent him for his image and whatnot, I mean, that's not a good look either. That's playing defense. I can't see him, even if the NFL clears him. That's just a cloud hanging over the organization. And to me, it's also an excuse for them to move away from him, avoid some and save some cap savings. But I think he's kicked his last kick in the NFL. I'd be very surprised once the Ravens move away from him if another team signs him. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, and as I said, red flags don't go down.
Ben Cleveland, shock.
Surprising. Yes, the guy gets a DUI and he gets to stay on the team. How does that happen,
And they
Esther?
don't even they don't even use him.
You talk about red flags. If you're going to take a red flag, make maybe it's a starter, but a fringe backup player that we're all surprised is still in the team. You make an exception for him. I don't know what the circumstances
Well, how
are,
do
but
I not call out their credibility when the
come
owner's
on,
running
man.
from me, the owner's running from everybody, the kicker's running from the
Look,
world, and a guy goes out and blows a double
look.
deuce, and they give him money and sign him, and they talk about zero tolerance, except there's nobody there to answer questions, and I'm not allowed to
You,
ask him anymore.
you and I were surprised that the morning after the report came out, or the morning during the report came out, that the Ravens did not release a statement saying that this guy was no longer part of their plans. They had a perfect chance to move away from him and pay him nothing, but like you said, they signed him for another year. Why? Oh, why? Give me a rookie. You're not going to be much worse. I mean, the guy hasn't really, he's blocked an extra point or a field goal in his career. That's been his highlight as a Raven. And we root for all the players, but guys with DUIs, I have a hard time getting behind that energy. Call me crazy, but that's a person I don't want on my team.
That's just dumb. What other dumb decisions are you going to make in a world of Uber?
Oh, it's not just dumb. It's completely irresponsible as a human being. You do not get behind the wheel of a vehicle if you're drunk. You just don't do that. Zero tolerance for that. But obviously, there's tolerance with the Baltimore Ravens, and the level depends on, I guess, what maybe they have
I
one of those
really
things
don't
on their
know. When
desk.
Ben Cleveland has cleared the bar to be on the team after and get it, but they're all innocent until proven guilty. So I'll just throw that out as well. But if I sat here and read through the things that Justin Tucker accused the reporters of within 5 minutes, it's gross, and I keep going back to that. But so for you, you think Tucker's done? What about Andrews?
That's interesting. I think it depends on what kind of value. I think they're going to try to trade him. Depends on what kind of value they can get back for him. If they get a high enough draft pick, I do
What
see
is
them
that in
moving
your mind?
away.
What does that got to be? A third,
Probably
a
a
fourth?
third,
What do
a
you get?
third. I'm thinking the third, maybe a third and a fourth. Third this year, fourth next year. The other piece is Isaiah Likely's coming along real well. It's hard for them to re-sign both of these tight ends at some point to extend these tight ends. And to me, if I'm going to extend one, it's going to be Likely over Andrews. The strip fumble, the drop pass in the end zone. Those are very hard things to come back from Nestor in this organization. I think he needs a fresh start someplace else. I think the Ravens needs a fresh start. And the other piece is, I think for him moving off of the team, it opens up the field for Lamar Jackson. This is a safety blanket. I think he'll go through his progressions better if Mark Andrews isn't on the team. But that was really a stinging loss, and those two plays really played a factor. And the Ravens had a wonderful chance had they won that game to go to Kansas City and beat up on the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. They had a golden opportunity and they missed it.
The Chiefs were vulnerable. I would agree with that.
Oh, their offensive line was garbage. I mean, we saw that in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. I mean, people talk about the Ravens and John Harbaugh versus Andy Reid. The last time the Ravens got embarrassed like that, they played in London, and that had a lot to do with the knee and guys kneeling and whatnot. John Harbaugh's teams just don't get blown out like that, particularly in the Super Bowl.
He is Dennis Koulatsos. He's over Coons Ford Security Boulevard, still doing it the way he's always done it over there. So make sure you stop by and say hello. Everything good? I mean, fishing, life's good for you. No thoughts of
Hey,
Oriole baseball. Is that out of sight, out of mind? You didn't want to
you
talk
know
about?
what? I watched the thing 2 innings this year. I'll confess I haven't really bought into the Orioles this year. I've just been very, very
Well,
busy
you
and
were never a baseball guy in that way. You
no,
sort of lost your flavor for it this century. And I'm writing a letter to Katie Griggs about that too, because they've refused, Dennis, they've refused to even sit in a room with me, the new people.
that's
I've had
insane.
two phone calls. Both of them have been very, very performative. I'm writing a letter to Katie Griggs this week, and it's just, um, you know, the owner had a
Hey,
bobblehead the other day. You're aware of
hey,
that, right?
he had a bobblehead for himself.
You really are out of touch, aren't you? David
Was the
Rubenstein
really?
had made a bobblehead for himself on Saturday and gave it to the first 15,000 customers. It was brought to you by CFG Bank. So they you're raising your eyebrow. You're like, he did what? And I'm like, yeah, he did that. So I'm
Wow.
telling you for the first time, there was a bobblehead for the new owner.
So he's not spending money to improve the team. He's spending money on bobblehead dolls. That's what when he bought the team, I was encouraged. I thought he would spend more money than Peter Angelos did. And I was
And he
really,
has, by the way, he spent
has he
money,
really?
whether it's
Okay.
wisely or
I
not.
didn't know.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad he's spending money. If I were him, I
Well,
would
he
save
spent it
money.
on bad 1 year pitchers. Oh, he's got a 41-year-old pitcher that's not. Dennis, they gave a 41-year-old pitcher $15 million. It's April. How do you think that worked out?
Probably not too well.
It didn't work out real.
Uh,
This is why you're the key decision maker. That's why I come to you for all of
look,
this draft
look,
knowledge.
I like people with their best ahead of them, not behind them. That called me crazy, but that's how I built my team. And if I ever get to the point where my best is behind me, I'm going to do the right thing. But I still think my best is still in front of me. The best is yet to come, and that's how we roll around here at Coon Sport of
And
Baltimore.
boy, won't that be great. There you go, little Tony Bennett, a little Anthony Benedetto right there.
Let's go, baby.
Dennis Koulatsos is over at Coons Ford Security Boulevard. He is still our friend. He is still there. Make sure you stop by, say hello. Happy draft week to you. And listen, this thing where you're not even playing dumb with the Orioles. You're just gone. God bless you. Go fish. Go fish.
I'd much rather fish. It's much more rewarding, much more enjoyable, and
Remember that game
that's
when you were a little boy? Go fish with the
go
cards?
fish,
Go
man.
fish.
Go fish. Yeah, go fish. That's my advice to everybody. Find yourself a little bass boat, go fishing.
All you make me want to do is get some butter and some lemon and some capers and some beurre blanc. I am Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. Old friends, new thoughts. We're Baltimore positive. Stay with us.